Jose Berrios might be back. Let's talk about it. Welcome into Fantasy Baseball today on Wednesday, April 26th. Frank Stampfl joined by Scott White. Today on the show, we're going to recap all of Tuesday's games, rank the recent pitching promotions, recent pitching prospect demotions as well. I guess we'll talk about that. Jose Berrios had his best start in a long time and much more. Before we get started, big thank you to everybody who has subscribed on YouTube over the years. We just hit 20,000 subscribers, which is awesome. Great milestone. Shared it with the bosses today. They're ecstatic. They love it. Thank you to everyone who has subscribed. If you're listening on the audio side, download, follow, and leave a 5-star rating. We really appreciate it. Scotty, let's jump in. Let's do it.
You can put it on the board. Yes. Yes.
You know, it's probably not the best idea that I used a White Sox sound drop on the day that Jose Berrios dominated them. But alas, Scott, here we are. Oh my goodness gracious for you.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Berrios because this was the best Berrios we've seen all year. And let me see. Let me remind myself if it's the best we saw of last year, too. He did have some good stretches last year, even though he finished with a 5.23 ERA. He had a 13 strikeout effort last year, a couple of them actually. So no, not the best Berrios we've seen in 2 years, but the best we've seen this year. He struck out 9 in 7 shutout innings against the White Sox, had 16 swinging strikes, including 7 on his changeup, which is not a pitch he features much usually. He threw it about twice as often in this one, and clearly it was working for him. I think what's even more notable than the strikeouts or the swinging strikes for Jose Berrios, though, is that average exit velocity in this start, 80.1 miles per hour. You know, there have been times when he seemed to be pitching pretty well, but he was still getting hit so hard that it gave us reason for skepticism. And now if you look at his season-long average exit velocity, it's similar to 2 years ago. It's similar to before the troubles really began for him. And so, you know, this just fits in with the theme of this season, or at least this April, where when it looks like we have a read on a pitcher, suddenly everything changes, because between this start and the 7 strong innings he threw at Houston last time, Berrios is looking like a pretty good bet again. And if I was on the verge of dropping him before, I'm clearly not now.
Yeah, and you're probably not going to find him on many waiver wires because he's 81% rostered on CBS. His first 2 starts this season, Jose Berrios, quite bad, but his last 3 now, 19 innings pitched, 3 earned runs, 18 strikeouts to just 2 walks. The control has been key for Berrios so far this season, limiting some of that hard contact, as you mentioned as well, Scott. And he needs to have one fastball, one of his 2 fastballs. He throws a 4-seam and a sinker. He needs to have one of those working at all times, because when he gets into trouble, it's like he can't command those, and he's basically just goes downhill fast. The sinker has been really good for him this year. I was watching that start today. He threw a few like 96 mile per hour with like crazy movement, like away from left-handed batters. It was just really, really impressive from what I saw from Jose Berrios in this one. Not ready to say that he's all the way back, but obviously we are trending in the right direction. And Scott, I noticed you were updating the rankings here on Tuesday night, and you got Jose Berrios up to SP 67. Was that before, after, while the start was going on?
That was before.
Okay.
And so let me see if I might want to move him up more. If I can pull it up here. Okay, 67 is where I have him now. I could get him probably to about 60th. So I have Jack Flaherty 61st. I think Berrios, I could staple him to Flaherty. Flaherty also showing signs of coming around recently. That would put them also in the Graham Ashcraft range of my rankings. And I've expressed doubts about Ashcraft recently, his ability to sustain what he's done so far. So I think that's about the right range. That would put them behind Justin Steele, Johan Oviedo, who looked pretty good in today's outing, even though he ended up with 4 earned runs. It certainly could have gone a lot worse against the Dodgers. So I haven't lost faith in Oviedo because of today's start. I think that's probably the right range for Berrios and Flaherty both.
Yeah, I think that makes sense too. I'm currently in the process of updating my rankings. I have him down at SP78, but he's going to move up quite a bit. And that's a similar range that I was looking at as well. I have Grayson Rodriguez at 61, Alex Cobb at 62, but maybe just behind those guys or right around those guys. I think that's a good range for Jose Berrios. Hopefully continues to keep that working. Oh my goodness gracious, for me, I'm going to go with a pitcher as well here, Scott. Josiah Gray, his best start of the season at the New York Mets. 6 shutout, 4 hits, 1 walk, 9 strikeouts with 20 swinging strikes against the Mets lineup. 9 of them on the slider, 7 on the fastball, 3 on the cutter. Limited the hard contact, just 86.3 exit velocity against in this one. And oftentimes when Josiah Gray has succeeded, it has been accentuating or favoring the secondary pitches, the breaking pitches. He actually went 4-seam fastball heavy in this one, but it worked, man. He had everything working in the start. If you look at the CSW, the called strikes plus whiffs on all of his pitches, they were great on every single one of his pitches. So outside of opening day, Gray's been pretty consistent. His last 4 starts, 2 earned runs or fewer. He's only 34% rostered. He's going up against the Pirates this weekend. So if you started him in a 2-star week, obviously you feel fantastic. And it looks like he's at the Diamondbacks next week. There aren't many names, Scott, that stood out to me from a waiver wire perspective on Tuesday here. But if there was one pitcher, it was Josiah Gray.
Yeah, I mean, this was his best start of the season. And you pointed out the irony that it was also the start that he featured his fastball the most, the pitch we've been calling on Josiah Gray to fade because of how hard it gets hit. It didn't get hit hard in this one. You mentioned Josiah Gray's average exit velocity for the game was good. On the fastball itself, it was 83.5. It was even better than his overall exit velocity for the game. So I don't know what was different about the fastball. I don't know if he could, if this is going to be a formula for success for him moving forward, but it led to him having his best start of the year. And, ultimately the results will tell the story. So, I'm already anxious to see Josiah Gray's next start. And I think that's a really favorable one. I had him as a sleeper for you said the Diamondbacks, right?
He's got the Pirates this weekend.
Pirates.
He's at the Diamondbacks next week.
Okay. So I was more concerned about, I had him as among my sleeper pitchers for this week with 2 starts, but I was more concerned about this first one against the Mets than the second against the Pirates. So I'm already anxious to see that next start, what the usage is, if he can continue to miss bats like he did in this one. But since allowing 3 home runs on opening day, he's allowed just 1 home run in 4 starts. And whatever it takes to keep the ball in the yard, if Josiah Gray is able to do that, then the results should be pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Some of the most added starting pitchers right now. I'm looking at the veterans for now because we're going to have a conversation coming up about all these pitching prospects. So I'm going to leave that for later. But Drew Smyly and Eduardo Rodriguez, Scott, are 2 kind of veteran type pitchers who are on the most added list. Would you rather have Josiah Gray over either of those?
Smyly, and who was the other one?
Eduardo Rodriguez.
I would rather have Gray than Smyly. It's a closer call with Edward Cabrera.
No, Eduardo Rodriguez, Scott.
Eduardo Rodriguez, sorry. Okay, yeah. I will go Eduardo Rodriguez, then Josiah Gray, then Drew Smyly of those 3.
All right, let's talk about all the prospects, Scott, and the biggest news. Well, maybe not the biggest news, but it is very big news. Taj Bradley optioned back to AAA on Tuesday, and the explanation that we were given was that Bradley needed to work on a 5-day schedule because he's currently on a 6-day schedule. So they sent him down. They want to get him, going every 5th day in a normal rotation would be. And the second excuse was that the Rays want to give Yanni Chirinos and Josh Fleming some more work. I don't know that I buy that exactly, Scott. But obviously this is very frustrating. The questions we're rolling in. What do we do with Taj Bradley? Do we hold on to him? When might we see him again? I think we can answer the first one. Do we hold on to him? The second one, we don't really know. Do you have a feel for what the Rays are doing right now with Taj Bradley?
I mean, Ray's gonna Ray is really
Yeah.
my response to this. I don't think it's a big deal for Taj Bradley's fantasy value. Yes, the uncertainty is annoying. Yes, the fact he's not going to be a 2-start pitcher after all this week is annoying. But he's going to be back soon enough. They have 3 true starting pitchers on their roster right now. Yes, Chirinos and Fleming have both started in the past, but they're not in a position to do that right now. So I don't know how they're going to handle this next time through the rotation, the Rays. I don't know why they can't adjust. If that's even a valid reason, adjusting Taj Bradley so that he's used to going every 5th day. I don't know why that adjustment couldn't happen in the majors. I don't know what it takes for that adjustment to take root, for them to say, yes, he's adjusted now. We can trust him to start every 5th day. I don't know what that looks like. So those are add to the confusion of the transaction. But ultimately, I think it's more just a temporary frustration than something to lose your mind over. And keep Bradley on your roster, and sooner than later, you're going to find out he's scheduled to make a start on this day. Okay, plug him back into your lineup.
Mm-hmm. Taj Bradley is up to 90% rostered. So, yeah, I think you got to hold him. As good as he's looked, 6+ strikeouts in all 3 of his starts, 3.52 ERA, 0.91 whip. How about some of these underlying ERA estimators for Taj Bradley? 2.60 FIP, 2.35 Sierra, 1.58 expected ERA. He has been dominant so far. So, look, you spent big money on Taj Bradley and Fab, or you use the top waiver spot. I think you got to continue to hold on to him. Some people brought up service time manipulation to me, Scott. Admittedly, it's kind of a blind spot in my analysis. I don't fully understand it. I thought you have to be down a certain time to gain an extra year of service time manipulation. So I don't even know how that would work. I guess there are other ways, but
yeah, it's service time. It's cumulative service time up to a certain point in the player's career. So you can, if he's called up earlier, you can bring him back down and reserve some service time so that he doesn't gain that Super 2 status and you don't lose that extra year of or I guess he doesn't go to arbitration. If he gets the Super 2 status, he goes to arbitration a year early, I think is how it works. Well, now I'm confusing myself, but I don't know that it's so much that than as just them being super fastidious with their roster. And I mean, I haven't looked ahead at the Rays schedule, how many off days they have coming up, but getting a fresh arm in right now when we're not going to need Taj Bradley until this day anyway. So I think it's just they're really hyperactive with managing, and I don't think it means we're not going to see Taj Bradley for 2 months so that we can avoid Super 2 status down the line. I don't think that's it. That doesn't ring true to me. I think, I think there's a certain amount of I don't know what the right word is, but like, yeah, I wouldn't make that much of that. I think we're going to see Bradley soon enough, and you'll want to hold on to him.
And I've seen people in the YouTube chat on excuse me, Twitter. Oh, I am choking here. On Twitter pointing out, Tyler Glasnow is going to be back soon, and that means Taj Bradley can't rejoin the rotation. Well, even if Tyler Glasnow is here, Shane McClanahan, Zach Eflin, Drew Rasmussen, Glasnow, that's 4. Taj Bradley could be their 5th. I mean,
yeah,
I don't know that they need to have an opener kind of bulk reliever situation in there. So again, I think all those 5 can very seamlessly work together in the rotation. The point is, hold on to Taj Bradley if you have him on your fantasy team. The other big news, Scott, and it's just kind of speculation for now. We don't know for sure, but Cleveland Guardians pitching prospect Tanner Bybee was scratched from his appearance on Tuesday in the minors. And now there's speculation because the Guardians don't have a probable pitcher set for Wednesday that Bybee is going to make that start. Now, we don't know for sure. They have not confirmed that as of now. We're recording this, late on Tuesday night. But if he does come up, I mean, this is a guy that's in that same kind of conversation as Taj Bradley and Brendan Pfaadt and Mason Miller. So in 28 starts in the minors from last year and this year so far for Bybee, 2.13 ERA, 0.97 whip, 186 strikeouts, over 148 innings pitched. So the next question, Scott, is what are your thoughts on Bybee? And how do you rank all these names? Taj Bradley, Bybee, Logan Allen, Mason Miller, Brendan Pfaadt.
Man, that second one is really hard to answer with the rankings because we don't know. Like,
Ah.
even if Bybee comes up, we don't know if that would be a one and done situation because they have 5 healthy starters, the Guardians, already. Now, could they move on from Zach Plesac pretty easily if Bybee comes up and shows he deserves to stay? Of course. Doesn't mean that's the most likely scenario, but it is a possibility. And, remember the first time Taj Bradley came up, we said, yeah, I don't really see how he's going to stick around. Well, I mean, I guess we were right about that in retrospect, but not because the Rays didn't have an opening for him. Like, life finds a way, right? So, Bybee, is a bigger prospect than Logan Allen, and he is a more he stands out in more traditional ways than Allen does. Allen, has succeeded a lot through deception and overcoming a lack of big stuff, while Bibby has better pure stuff and also remarkable control. If you look at his walk rate in the 3 starts this year, it's high because his last start he happened to walk a bunch of guys. But last year, Tanner Bybee in the minors, his walk rate was it was 1.8 per 9 innings to go with 11.3 K per 9. And him being in the Guardians organization, that earned him some Shane Bieber comparisons from the prospect hounds because Bieber really stood out for his ridiculous walk rates before being called up too. So I really like Tanner Bybee. I think if we had assurances he'd stick around, honestly, he might be just as exciting, if not more so, than Brandon Pfaadt. I don't think it's crystal clear which of the two of them is the better prospect. But we don't know that he's even coming up, first of all, and we don't know that he's sticking if he does, because they already have 5 starters, as I said. So, getting to the ranking of these players for fantasy, I'm going to go Taj Bradley, number 1. I'm going to go Logan Allen, number 2, because they haven't sent him down yet. So I think that means they plan to keep him around. I don't know. Maybe that's the transaction that gets Bybee on the roster. I don't know. But I'm presuming Allen has a spot for now. Third, I am going to go with... I'm going to go with Brandon Pfaadt, actually, because I'm pretty sure he's going to get an opportunity soon here. And then I'll go with Tanner Bybee. And I'm actually going to go with Mason Miller last year here. I was saying on yesterday's show, or on Monday's show, that I feel like the hype has exceeded the utility for Mason Miller. And his start today against the Angels was pretty underwhelming. And I mean, he threw a very hard fastball again, but he allowed contact at average exit velocity over 100 miles per hour. And he only made it 4 innings again, allowed 4 earned runs in those innings. And it was just like, if you're going to be pitching for the A's, you have to be lights out to be an impactful fantasy pitcher. And I just don't think Mason Miller, at this point in his development anyway, is there.
More on Mason Miller in just a bit, because I watched every pitch of his start on Tuesday night, and
every pitch. You didn't look away for one.
I did not look away. It set
impressed.
me back. It set me back a little bit, Scott. If I'm ranking this group, yeah, I think it's tough, Scott, because given We don't know who's going to stick around. It's based on performance. If Tanner Bybee comes up on Wednesday and pitches really well, then he probably sticks around. It's worth mentioning that Peyton Battenfield made a start on Tuesday, and he looked pretty bad. And
yeah, no, that's a good point.
Cal Quantrill got rocked on Monday, and Zach Plesac has terrible numbers this year. So I think that they could just kind of push all in on like a prospect pitching staff, and it would make some sense to me, at least for the Cleveland Guardians. So if I'm ranking this group for now, I would put Taj Bradley at the top. I think I would go Brandon Pfaadt second. There was a report on Tuesday, according to Theo Mackey of the Arizona Republic, Pfaadt could start this weekend in Colorado, which is like the last place you want to start a rookie, but okay.
And man, he's already used to that kind of environment with where he's had to pitch in the minors.
That's true. So I'm going Taj Bradley, Brandon Pfaadt. I guess Logan Allen, just because for the reasons you mentioned, we know he's up right now. And I don't, as good as he looked, I don't think they're going to send him down right away. And then Tanner Bybee and then Mason Miller. But I mean, if we're just going based on pure stuff, like Tanner Bybee might be second for me. So
you're going Mason Miller last too.
I am going Mason Miller.
You must not have liked what you saw watching every pitch.
Not necessarily, but there are limitations. So let's talk about it. The final line, it is disappointing. I wrote on the rundown, it seems disappointing. It is disappointing. 4 innings, 5 hits, 4 earned runs, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts, 9 swinging strikes on 86 pitches. He threw 12 fastballs, 100 plus miles per hour. We know that he could throw very hard. His first inning, Scott, was very eventful. He got squeezed big time against Anthony Rendon. He threw a fastball down the middle, legitimately down the middle. You can go on MLB.com, game day. You can look. It was down the middle, and they called it a ball. We wound up walking Anthony Rendon, and then everything just kind of spiraled after that in that first inning. The next batter was Brandon Drury, and he hit a line drive to center field. Esteury Ruiz slipped on the play, and it turned what would have been a single if he just knocked it down. He just didn't get to it. It turned into a 2-run triple. And after that, there was a few more hits. He settled down after that, though. His final 3 innings of work, he gave up 1 hit, 0 walks, and 4 strikeouts. So, I mean, to be able to have a first inning that bad and then settle down, I was pretty impressed by that. But for the reasons you mentioned, Scott, obviously pitching for the Oakland A's, Shea Langoliers, did not realize this before. He is a terrible framer. There were pitches that were right there on the corners where Langoliers just kind of flailed his glove at it and just did not do a good job at framing pitches. So I worry about that. Obviously, the defense behind him, the run support's not going to be good. I think there's a pitcher there, a very exciting pitcher, but there are limitations. So I like him. I guess I would drop him for any of those other pitchers that we talked about. But if those guys are not available and you picked up Mason Miller, then I would just hold and see where it goes from here.
I'm just saying, you have to temper your expectations. He could take off at some point. That's always a possibility. Things can change very quickly for a pitcher, especially, or really for any player. I mean, look at what's happened with Jose Berrios and Jack Flaherty, how quickly we've changed our tune with them, especially Berrios. But only once in his entire career as a professional has Mason Miller gone 5 innings, and it was his very last minor league start. And again, it's such a big hurdle to clear pitching for the A's because they are terrible. They are historically bad.
Yes.
So how good does Mason Miller have to be to win a decent number of starts? It's just so many things stacked up against him, and whatever bad luck he may have suffered from in this start here Tuesday, again, average exit velocity over 100 miles per hour. When they made contact, it was really, really hard contact. And they made contact more than you might think because his swinging strike rate was only 10.5%, which is nothing special.
Yeah, he is not perfect by any means. He needs to work on his breaking pitches. I think the slider and cutter are serviceable pitches for him, but he couldn't throw them for strikes. And so opposing batters in this start, they were just laying off and they were just teeing up on the fastball. They were timed up for the fastball. That's all they were swinging at. So he's got some things that he needs to work on. But as I mentioned, again, if those other names are available, okay, you could drop Mason Miller for them. But if not, I would say let's just hold, see where it goes from here. The pitch count is interesting. 81 in his first outing, 86 in this one. So it wouldn't surprise me if he can go 5 innings regularly based on that pitch count, at least. Frankly, he's throwing more pitches than I thought he would. Let's take our first break. And when we return, I got a few other waiver wire pitchers we'll get to right after this.
Phenomenal! Absolutely magisterial here! Artilharia do Campeonato Brasileiro! Golpista ancora! Golazo!
Welcome back, and just a quick reminder to sign up for our Fantasy Baseball Today newsletter. Dan Steyer does a great job with it. You can head over to cbssports.com/newsletters, punch in your email address, and press sign up. It's easy as that. It's free, and you get the latest news and articles delivered right to your inbox every single day. Spoke about Josiah Gray earlier, and he was really at the top of the waiver wire pitchers. Where does he fit into that group, Scott? I guess, look, if we're talking about Brandon Pfaadt and all these names that are available right now, where would Josiah Gray rank on that list?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I don't actually have a lot of faith in Josiah Gray. I mean, he's done what he needs to do to avoid the season he had last year. He's kept the ball in the park. But am I confident that he's made the adjustments necessary to continue with that? Or is it just kind of a thing that's happened, you know? And we've gotten burned, as I talked about at length yesterday, we've gotten burned in recent years by just kind of having blind faith in the upside guy, the prospect who just got promoted, and it going pretty disastrously. That's been happening more and more. I am going to say that I would rather have him. I would rather have. I think Mason Miller is the only one I'd rank behind Josiah Gray from that previous group. So I would take over him each of Taj Bradley, Logan Allen, Tanner Bybee, and Brandon Pfaadt over Josiah Gray. So that shows you kind of where I am with Gray in terms of level of faith, confidence that what he's doing is something he can sustain. Of course, it may depend on what your actual needs are. Like, is this somebody you can afford to stash on your bench, or do you need to be able to plug this guy in your lineup right away? Well, the one who's most likely to take his next turn is Josiah Gray. And so, you know, it maybe depends on your needs, maybe depends on your league depth, where exactly you slot him in there. But as a general rule, when it is a player that I don't have much faith in, I'm going to still side with the upside guys.
All right. Outside of Josiah Gray, a few other names that stood out on Tuesday night. Marco Gonzalez has had a solid start to the season, 5 innings, 1 run, 2 strikeouts for him. He was at the Phillies. The ERA is 3.32 with a 1.25 whip. Griffin Canning had a solid outing versus the A's, 5 innings, 3 runs, 7 strikeouts with 14 swinging strikes, only 17% rostered. And Brady Singer, we recently have called a drop, and rightfully so. He's down to 64% rostered. He turned in his first quality start of the season, 6 innings, 1 run, 5 strikeouts, 0 walks. Scott, I think we need to see a lot more from Brady Singer before we consider picking him back up. But what do you think about this group? Singer, Canning, and Marco Gonzalez.
Oh, I'm most excited about Canning. He has yet to go 6 innings, you know, coming off multiple injury plague seasons. So it's understandable that he's not taken on a big workload yet. But if he continues to pitch this well, I imagine he'll start going deeper and deeper into games. Between his 3 starts now, he has a 16.7% swinging strike rate, which would rank up there with the very best in all of baseball. That's like Garrett Cole type stuff. Just looking at swinging strike rate, obviously it's you probably shouldn't do single factor analysis with pitchers, but that's a really good skill to have, Griffin Canning. And it's something he showed before these injury issues started. Remember, he was a favorite of mine coming off his rookie season because he showed so much swinging and miss ability with that slider, especially. So I am excited about Griffin Canning, and he is somebody who I would try to add, not over Josiah Gray, not over some of those other exciting young pitchers we were talking about earlier, but just in in a general sense. If they're already rostered, if you have a spot to play with, Canning, I think, is worth pursuing. As for the other ones, Marco Gonzalez is, he has a track record of being pretty effective in fantasy. Last year was more the exception than the rule. But it's always been ways that are difficult to understand. A really poor bat misser. I'd be reluctant to invest in him as more than a streamer type. And Brady Singer, I like you said, Frank, I need to see a lot more because he entered this start. I feel like average exit velocity is the stat I'm beating to death here in this particular podcast, but he would first percentile. He was worse than 99% of the league in terms of average exit velocity. Brady Singer coming into the start, 97.6 miles per hour. It was 84.7 in this start. So it wasn't just that he happened to get good results. It seemed like he was missing the barrels better. He was pitching better. And if it continues, then maybe Brady Singer is going to be somebody to look into in fantasy again. Maybe he can go the way of Jose Berrios and reclaim his value. But I need to see more. And I don't think he has as much upside as a Jose Berrios anyway. So that's another reason why there's no need to do a total about face on him yet.
I don't think this matters, but Ryan Feltner has 2 strong starts in a row, Scott. And for those who don't know, he pitches for the Colorado Rockies. I don't blame you if you don't know. 6 innings, 1 unearned run with 6 strikeouts. And he's throwing his changeup more this season. This is a very deep league name, Scott, but anything with Ryan Feltner.
Oh, it takes a lot to win me over to a Rockies pitcher unless he just has this huge prospect pedigree. And even the Rockies pitchers we've seen come up with that kind of pedigree over the years have, not been standouts in fantasy. I'm thinking John Gray specifically. So no, I'm not going to be making a move for Feltner, even in my deepest leagues.
All right, let's hit some news and notes. Yordan Alvarez's neck injury was, quote, about the same as Monday, and apparently an IL stint has not been ruled out for Yordan Alvarez. Scott, we had a long conversation about Jordan Walker yesterday. He has now sat out 2 in a row and 3 of his past 4 games with the Cardinals. And somebody on Twitter pointed out to us that Walker made a pretty bad base running mistake recently, so perhaps that's the reason why. But man, 2 games in a row. Sitting out.
There is a reported reason why.
Why is that?
So this is coming from Katie Wu of The Athletic. I'll read the tweet directly. Jordan Walker has been working on a variety of things with his swings, specifically his posture and rotation, which is why he's been out of the lineup for the last 2 games. There's also been a focus to get him off the ground more and lower his chase rate outside the zone. I think get off the ground more means elevating, hitting the ball in the air. So they're working on a swing. I don't know if he'd be better served working on a swing in the minors. I don't know. That's kind of a weird report. Like how much work can be done on your swing between starts. But I don't really know whether to take that as an encouraging sign. Okay, they're sitting him because they're working on things. It's not because they just don't want to start him anymore. Or if it's a discouraging sign, oh, they think he needs a lot of work. How much longer are they going to keep him around? I don't know how to take it. I think you just sit tight with Jordan Walker because in the long run, he's still probably going to be a big fantasy asset, but he hasn't hit the ground running. It's fair to say.
Yeah, and all of those things are accurate. His ground ball rate is 60% so far. That is much higher than we'd like it to be. His chase rate is a touch over 40%, which league average is around, 30 to 32%. So both of those numbers are high. And even with that, still batting .274, 2 homers, 2 steals, a .718 OPS. So I fall on the side of more encouraged, Scott, that he has these issues. They're aware of them. And even with that, he hasn't been a total disaster. He still has had some good moments so far this season. Carlos Rodon plans to throw off the mound on Friday. He'll need several bullpens without issue before heading out on a rehab assignment. Jake McCarthy has been optioned back to AAA, and Scott, lots of questions about McCarthy. Do you drop him everywhere, even your, 15-team 5 outfielder leagues?
Probably. I'd hesitate in the 15-team 5 outfielder leagues. It would obviously depend what I could pick up instead. The waiver wire is generally pretty sparse there.
Yeah.
So maybe not in those formats. But if you're talking a 12-team roto league with 5 outfield spots, I mean, the main thing we were hoping McCarthy would contribute is stolen bases, and those are looking pretty plentiful at this point. So with no idea when he's going to come back, how he's going to perform when he does, I think it's probably okay to move on.
Tim Anderson will likely need 10 to 15 at bats during his minor league rehab stint before he can return to the White Sox. Dodgers catcher Will Smith is slated to take live batting practice on a Wednesday, and he's been on the concussion IL for just over a week now. I think 9 days. Last Monday he was placed on the IL, so hopefully we get him back soon. MJ Melendez has missed 2 straight due to back tightness. Logan Gilbert had his start pushed back to Wednesday because he felt muscle spasms in his scapula. Tony Gonsolin is confirmed to make his first start of the season on Wednesday at the Pirates. Raisel Iglesias will throw either live batting practice or in a minor league rehab appearance on Thursday. He has missed the start of the season due to a shoulder injury. Austin Hayes was removed Tuesday night with a right hand contusion. Preliminary x-rays came back negative for any fractures. But if Austin Hayes does have to go on the IL for this reason, Scott, perhaps we see Colton Cowser get the call for the Orioles.
Perhaps we do. Colton Cowser is a top prospect. He was the 5th overall pick in 2021. And so far this year, AAA Norfolk, he's hitting .290 with 3 homers, 2 steals, an .880 OPS, high walk rate, .407 OBP. Last year at AA, last year was split between 3 levels, but he played 49 games at AA and hit .341. Did Colton Cowser. The strikeout rate is a little higher than you'd like for a guy who doesn't profile as like a big power hitter. But certainly in 5 outfielder leagues, he'd be somebody you'd want to invest in as soon as he got the call. And there's no reason he couldn't stay up, even when Austin Hayes returns. Like if he performs well, they have a DH spot to play with. They could just slide Anthony Santander there, presuming Anthony Santander is deserving of being in the lineup still at that point. So, yeah, definitely keep an eye on what happens with Colton Cowser. I imagine I'm writing the prospects report tomorrow. I imagine he'll be featured pretty prominently in that.
How about that prospects report, Scott? You have names just flying off that list right now, right?
I know, completely unexpected too. I figured that with the way incentives have changed for the promoting of prospects, we'd see a big rush of promotions in September, late enough that they don't lose rookie eligibility for the following season. And then we'd see a lot more make the opening day roster so that they could qualify for draft pick rewards if they happen to finish high in rookie of the year voting or MVP voting in future seasons. So I thought that's what would happen, but we're not even a month into the season, and how many prospect call-ups have we seen so far? It makes me wonder, like if you were willing to go for it this early and to call up the prospect this early, why not have them on the opening day roster and give yourself a shot at maybe like a distant shot? Obviously, he has to perform up to a rookie of the year level, but at getting a draft pick, like that seems weird to me. Like it seems weird that we're seeing more call-ups than usual this early in the season, even though the incentives are higher for just having them on the opening day roster. I don't know if it's just so many bad things have happened that these teams have had no choice but to turn to their farm system. Maybe that's it, but it's a little bit weird.
Yeah, there are a few, I guess, kind of details that work in there. Like you have to be a consensus top 100 prospect to earn those rewards. It's not just like any prospect. You have to be a top 100 guy. And I guess teams still could, manipulate service time. So, for the Orioles, for example, they have Gunnar Henderson. So they have their shot at that draft pick compensation. And
it doesn't hurt to have 2 shots though.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. Hey, they didn't even have Grayson Rodriguez on
Right,
the
exactly.
roster, so that was
Exactly.
kind of interesting too.
Yeah.
I think the point of all this is that just talking it through, the Orioles have a lot of fun prospects that are
Yeah.
coming, man.
They were the most represented team in my preseason top 100.
Yeah, and rightfully so. Lance McCullers threw 20 to 30 pitches from the front of the bullpen mound on Tuesday. He's still several weeks away. And Scott, what do you think happens when Lance McCullers returns? Who gets the boot from the Astros rotation?
It could possibly be Jose Urquidy, who has struggled in his last 2 starts. Hunter Brown, I think, would be the odds-on favorite. They could shift him to the bullpen or whatever else. It's not like he's been so overpowering that it would be ridiculous to take him out of the rotation. But they could do Urquidy instead. It would be somebody we're invested in either way. Obviously, we'd rather have McCullers. But yeah, we'd be losing somebody who has some value.
JD Martinez was out of the lineup Tuesday due to back tightness. Garrett Mitchell will have surgery on his left shoulder after receiving a second opinion. If everything works out, he could be back towards the end of the season, but in redraft leagues, he can be dropped. More bad news for the Brewers as top outfield prospect Sal Frelick is having surgery to repair a torn UCL in his thumb. So he's out for the next 4 to 6 weeks or so. Ranger Suarez will begin a rehab assignment at AA on Thursday. He's 35% rostered. Scott, any interest in Ranger Suarez?
Not really, but it will probably come to pass that he's in my 10 sleeper pitchers one of these weeks. I think he's probably going to be more in that streamable class of starting pitchers than somebody who needs to be rostered everywhere.
Angels manager Phil Nevin said Jose Suarez will stay in the team's rotation on a start-by-start basis, and Chase Silseth was pitching well in the minors, but left his start Tuesday with a blister. So maybe that's why they didn't make a move yet. But if Silseth is okay and Suarez continues to struggle, they probably make that swap at some point. Brian Reynolds finally reached an agreement with the Pirates, signing an 8-year, $106.75 million extension, which I kind of went back and forth a little bit on this guy. I think it's a little team friendly, this deal. Brian Reynolds with the Pirates. I don't know if you saw the logistics.
I mean, I didn't see the breakdown, but yeah, it surprised me how low it was given what a trade asset he was supposed to be. You know, and he's nearing the end of team control too, right? So to get him at, what does that average out to a year? It averages out to just over 13 million.
Yeah.
Like that's like the kinds of contracts, free agent contracts that were being handed out this offseason to players in like of Brian Reynolds' stature. Like, what would he get in the open market? Like between 25 and 30 million a year? It seemed ridiculously team friendly to me.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'd do it.
Last but not least, Cody Bellinger was also placed on the paternity list on Tuesday. Scott, do you know which team Cody Bellinger played for last year, by the way?
The Dodgers. Yeah. They must have had a pregnancy pack going on. That's all I can figure. They said, all right, we're going to go home. We're not going to the All-Star game. So let's go home and see how many of us can get our wife pregnant. That must have been a conversation that happened in the clubhouse.
Yeah, I don't planning it 9 months in advance. They just kind of tell it, hey, we'll have 1 week where we're all off during the baseball season next year, and then we'll all be back right after that, and everything will be all right. So it's just a very, very
prove your virility while you're off.
very, very interesting stuff there. Let's take our final break, and when we get back, a few waiver wire hitters on fantasy baseball today.
Ghostface is here. He's gonna keep coming for us.
Did you miss me?
We've got to lure him in. And we execute him.
Scream, rated R. Now streaming on Paramount Plus.
Let's talk waiver wire hitters, and we'll start with some outfielders here. Charlie Blackmon was moved up to the leadoff spot for the Rockies. He went 2 for 5 with his second home run. He's down to 70% rostered, so could be out there in some shallower leagues, and maybe he was dropped, for the right reasons. Not providing much at this point in his career. Jarren Duran, post-hype Jarren Duran, 3 for 4 with a grand slam. His first home run of the season, he added 3 runs scored. He had 4 hard hit balls in this one. The home run was 107.8 miles per hour off the bat, traveled 409 feet. He's hitting the ball hard. The problem here, Scott, has been the strikeouts so far for Jarren Duran. He did have 0 strikeouts in this game, but overall, he's got a 31% strikeout rate early on. Joey Meneses went 3 for 5 with 2 RBI. He's slowly coming around. Mike Yastrzemski went 2 for 4 with his 5th home run. He's been hot. His last 15 games, he's batting .316 with 3 homers. Andrew McCutchen, 1 for 5 with his 5th homer, added 3 RBI. He's batting .270. I think he still has more walks than strikeouts, or at least he did the last time I checked. Scott, how do you... there's 5 names here. Who are your 3 favorites from this group? Blackmon, Duran, Meneses, Yastrzemski, and McCutchen.
McCutchen is number 1, I think.
Yeah.
I will go, I think Yastrzemski number 2. And for what it's worth, like I'm not super high on any of these guys. I don't think any of them have much utility in 3 outfielder leagues. Like if you're in a pinch, obviously you could pick one up and start them. But yeah, I'm going to say McCutchen and Yastrzemski, 2 guys who we've seen be impactful fantasy players in the past. And I think 3rd, I'm going to say Jarren Duran, just because I'm intrigued by the upside. He's the only real base stealer of this group. And so, yeah, those are going to be in the top 3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm very interested in what Duran is doing right now for the Red Sox. I lied about McCutchen. He's struck out a little bit more recently, so he's up to 12 walks to 15 strikeouts, but still, that's very good plate discipline.
I'm not really sure if anything's changed for Yastrzemski, because last time we saw him be a quality fantasy option was 2020, so it's been a couple years. But he already has the hardest hit ball of his career this year, which I always find interesting.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about a few catchers here, Scott. There's been a lot of catcher injuries recently, and so let's talk about it. Danny Jansen went 3 for 4 with a double dong, 4 RBI. He has 3 homers over his last 3 games. He's just not playing that much. That's been the issue for Jansen. 32% rostered. Keibert Ruiz went 3 for 4 with his 2nd home run. He's batting .288 early on. Shea Langoliers went 1 for 2 with a walk and his 5th homer. Blake Sabol went 2 for 4 with his 4th home run. It was a walk-off 2-run shot in that game, last game of the night up against the Cardinals. How do you rank that group, Scott? Jansen, Keibert Ruiz, Langoliers, and Blake Sabol.
I guess I'll still put Jansen number 1 because I don't think any of the other 3 have done enough to overtake him. Obviously, prior to this 2-homer game, Jansen had done next to nothing, but he has a little bit of a track record that we can hope on. So I'll go Jansen number 1. If it's a points league, I might go Ruiz number 2 just because he never strikes out. But if it's categories league, he's going to drop to 4th for me. And I'll take Langoliers over Sabol. Though of these 4, I still kind of feel like Sabol has the most upside. His quality of contact is very high. He hasn't made a lot of contact, but he's getting plenty of playing time. He's also the only one of these 4 who's likely to contribute any number of stolen bases. So keep an eye on Blake Sabol.
All right. For the deep leaguers out there, Mauricio Dubon went 2 for 5 with 2 doubles and his 2nd steal. He now has a 19-game hitting streak this season. 18-run score, that helps. He's, but batting average and runs, he's not really providing you much else outside of that. And a gentleman named Brenton Doyle was recently called up for the Rockies. He went 3 for 4 with 2 steals in his 2nd game, 4% rostered. Obviously, some very deep league names here, Scott. Anything we need to know with these 2, Dubon and Doyle?
I don't think Dubon offers much offensively in the long run, so I wouldn't get too excited about him. There's just not a lot of upside there. And there's not a lot for Brenton Doyle either, but he was a 2020 guy in the minors last year, 26 homers, 23 steals. He reached base at a 300 clip between AA and AAA. So I don't think he really profiles as an everyday major leaguer, but there are, Coors Field can do some special things to hitters, and he has at least shown that power speed combo in the minors.
All right, let's talk about a few pitchers who did not perform all that well here on Tuesday night. What do we do with them? Continue to start? Do we bench them, or do we just flat out drop them? We'll start with Kyle Badish. Very bad, very badish. Up against the Red Sox, 2 1/3, 8 hits, 7 earned runs, 4 walks, only 1 strikeout, allowed a lot of hard contact. And, he's made 2 full starts. He left early in his first start of the season, but he was great against the Nationals and then awful against the Red Sox here, Scott. He has a start at the Tigers this weekend and then at the Braves next week. What are we doing with Kyle Bradish?
So obviously he has a lot to prove still. And when you have a start this bad, it's fine to move on if you need to. Like if Bradish is who you need to drop to get that exciting waiver wire pickup, I'd probably drop him for Josiah Gray at this point. It's not like I was particularly enthusiastic about picking up Gray, but there is a case for holding on to Bradish too, because his next start is at Detroit this weekend. At least see how that goes. And if he bounces back with a big start against that awful offense, well, then maybe he's worth holding on to for a little longer, though obviously you're probably not going to look to start him against the Braves next week.
Johan Oviedo had his first rough start of not of the season, of the week. But 5 1/3, 5 runs allowed, 4 of those earned, 4 strikeouts. I didn't really see anything that stood out to me here, Scott. And, nothing too bad. He didn't allow a lot of hard contact. I think maybe just got BABIP'd a little bit in this one. I only bring it up because some people might see this and say, oh, I picked him up for 2 starts. I'm going to go ahead and drop him now. What would you say to that?
Yeah, like I said earlier in the show, I'm still enthusiastic about Oviedo. He kind of ran out of steam there after 4 innings, allowed the other 3 runs in the 5th and 6th. And also his slider was down 1.5 miles. And remember, the jump in 3 miles per hour is kind of what has allowed him to take off this year. So that's something to keep an eye on, but just a 1 start blip, particularly against the Dodgers. I'm not really going to hold it against him.
All right. Next up, we have Noah Syndergaard, who was on the other side of that game, and he now has 3 quality starts and 2 awful starts. He gave up 7 earned runs over 4 innings pitched at the Pirates, 9 hard hits allowed in this start, and because of the 2 blowups, he now has a 6.58 ERA, still 87% rostered. Scott, what are you doing with Noah Syndergaard?
I don't have a lot of faith in him. I haven't seen anything in his any Arsenal changes or any of the underlying stats that make me think, okay, he can survive with this reduced velocity. The Dodgers have worked their magic on some veteran pitchers in the past, but I remain highly skeptical that they're going to do that with Syndergaard, and I don't think he's must roster by any stretch.
Mm-hmm. Would you drop him for the group of prospects we talked about earlier?
Yeah, any of them.
Okay. What about Mike Clevenger? He gave up 6 earned runs over 5 innings pitched. He's up to a 4.81 ERA and 1.60 WHIP.
He gone. Get him out of there.
5 more walks for my boy, Blake Snell, who I was telling people to draft, unfortunately. 5 innings pitched, 2 earned runs, 5 walks, 5 strikeouts. He has 18 walks in 23 1/3 innings this season.
Yeah.
7 walks per 9 so far this year. What do we do, Scott?
I am thankful I'm not invested in Blake Snell anywhere, because I think this is probably the most difficult player to deal with.
Gosh.
Because, what happened each of the last 2 years? Second half rolls around and he looks like an ace. But there's no guarantee that's going to happen again this year. So do you just plant him on your bench in the hope that come late July, you'll have a really nice pitcher at that point?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think I'd be ready to drop him just yet, because it doesn't necessarily have to be in late July when it happens either. Maybe he turns things around in May this year, but it's just the two-faced nature of Blake Snell just makes him really difficult to deal with. Obviously can't start him right now. He's crushing your whip and most of the time your ERA too.
Yeah. And for those who play in points leagues, he routinely is worse in that format too, because he doesn't go all that deep into his starts. He doesn't provide many quality starts. So he's got a 2-start week next week, it looks like, up against the Reds and the Dodgers. That's going to have to be one that we talk about on Friday's podcast. A few pitching standouts. Joe Ryan, man, bad job by me because we're 55 minutes in. I mean, I don't know that there's much to say outside of he's been amazing so far this season, but that's exactly right. 7 innings, 2 runs, 7 strikeouts, 0 walks going up against the Yankees in this one. Joe Ryan is 5-0. He's got a 2.81 ERA, 0.81 whip, 36 strikeouts to just 4 walks this season. He's been phenomenal. Yep. I said I was fading him this year, and I've been dead wrong about him so far. Scott, you moved him up to SP 31, and I was glancing at my rankings, and I think he's going to get inside my top 30. That range features a lot of inconsistent pitchers right now with Lance Lynn and Chris Sale and Nick Lodolo. So I think Joe Ryan should be ranked ahead of all those names.
Yeah, I have him ahead of those 3, getting him up to 31. I do have him behind Nestor Cortez, but you could talk me into moving him ahead of Cortez. You could probably talk me into moving him ahead of George Kirby, and that would put him at 29th for me.
Yeah.
That's about the level I'm valuing Joe Ryan right now, who I thought, obviously had a tremendous minor league track record, and I thought did some pretty impressive things last year too. Seems to be building off that.
Mm-hmm. A few other standouts. Charlie Morton had his best start of the season up against the Marlins. 7 innings, 1 run, 9 strikeouts for him. Luis Garcia makes it 2 strong starts in a row. He was at Tampa Bay, 6 shutout with 7 strikeouts in that one. Justin Steele continues his breakout season up against the Padres, 5 1/3 shutout with 5 strikeouts. And Martin Perez turned in his first quality start of the year, 6 1/3, 1 unearned run, 5 strikeouts going up against the Reds. Anything that stood out for those names, Scott? Perez, Steele, Luis Garcia, and Charlie Morton.
Nice to see Perez get back on track with a quality start. First quality start of the year. His average exit velocity is about the same as last year, and his walk rate's actually better than last year. So I'm not saying he's must roster or anything, but it wouldn't surprise me if Martin Perez turned out to be a pretty reliable option again, even if the innings have been limited here early on. As for Luis Garcia, as you mentioned, 2 awesome starts in a row after a rough start to the season. In these 2 starts, he's featured his cutter a lot more. He's thrown it, I believe, about close to 50% of the time each of these last 2 starts. And it's been, obviously it's led to good results for him. So hopefully he's unlocked something there, figured something out that will allow him to take the next step forward in his development. But, he was already pretty highly regarded to begin with.
All right, a few hitting leftovers. Masataka Yoshida went 2 for 4 and now has multiple hits in 5 of his last 6 games. And during that span, he's got 12 hits, 2 homers, 9 RBI. Needs a little bit of time. Looks like he is coming around. Masataka Yoshida. Maybe the breakout game that Miguel Vargas needs to get going. He went 2 for 4 with a double, 2 RBI, and a walk. Jared Kelenic.
I think that double was a bloop, for what it's worth, a blooper. But sometimes that raises the confidence, and you see a hot streak develop from that. That's what all the old school announcers always told me anyway.
Oh, man. Old school announcers. It just reminds me about some of them are just so salty about analytics, and it's so frustrating to hear. Like when you're watching games, there are some broadcasters that do a great job with it. I really like listening to the Astros broadcast. They're very forward thinking, and they openly talk about StatCast and FIP and XFIP and stuff. And this is great. Love it. Jared Kelenic went 3 for 4 with his 7th home run. He hit a double, and the home run came off of lefty Bailey Falter, which is a great sign. I mean, we get everyday playing time and doing it against righties and lefties now, Scott. It's looking good.
Yeah, I'm beginning to think this is. I'm beginning to become a true believer here in Jared Kelenic. Obviously I was more open to drafting him than a lot of people coming into the year, but with a certain amount of healthy skepticism still. even prior to this game with the 2 extra base hits off a lefty, he was 5 for 15 off lefties with only 3 strikeouts, a home run, a double. Now the numbers look even better. He's hit 3 home runs. I don't know exactly the pitches, the home run. I don't know what the pitch was that he homered off of today, but he entered today's game with 3 home runs off sliders. His strikeout rate is down to about 25%. Like, everything is looking good for Jared Kelenic right now, and I think if you drafted him, you should be pretty excited.
How about this? By the end of April, who had Jared Kelenic being more valuable in fantasy than Julio Rodriguez? That's pretty crazy to think about, huh, Scott?
Yeah, we got 5 days to go. A lot can change just in one day, but yeah, as of now, that's true.
That is crazy. Yeah, I'm looking at Roto rankings. Kelenic is 42nd. Julio is 55th. So it could change, but man, it's crazy. Ozzie Albies went 2 for 4 with a double dong. He's batting .263. He's got 7 homers, 23 steals. So providing the counting stats, except for steals, he's got 0 steals, and he's 54th percentile in sprint speed, which seemed a little low for me.
Yeah, he doesn't usually rate high in sprint speed. At least he hasn't the past couple years, so that doesn't strike me as odd. I think part of the issue is just that he hasn't spent much time at first base. He doesn't walk much, and a lot of his hits so far have been like 7 home runs. A lot of them have been the extra base variety. Mm-hmm. So I still would pencil Albies in for between 15 to 20 steals when all is said and done. Yeah, 54 percentile sprint speed was exactly the same as last year. Okay. It has been declining over the course of his career, but I think this, like, remember Jason Stark had that article he wrote prior to the season interviewing mainly Albies about the new rules, and Albies was like, sure, I'll go 40-40. Why not? So like it seems like he's motivated to run, and maybe he just hasn't gotten any opportunities yet. But like to see what he's doing with the bat. I think the question we had coming in about, will his power translate to this new environment? Well, I guess that remains unanswered because the new environment is now an even newer environment that's different. But Albies is hitting for power is the bottom line.
Jorge Polanco is on fire since returning. He went 2 for 4 with 2 doubles, and in 5 games played, he's got 9 hits, 1 homer, and 6 RBI. I moved him up to my 12th ranked second baseman, and I saw Scott, you moved him up to 13th, and I think that's a good range for Jorge Polanco. Byron Buxton went 2 for 4 with his 4th home run. Got to see him come around a little bit. Corbin Carroll has been pretty great so far. 3 for 4 with a double, triple, 2 runs scored, and 2 stolen bases. He is now up to 10 steals on the season. He's batting over 300, and he's now batting 3rd in the Diamondbacks lineup. So you love to see it. A few bullpen updates for the Dodgers. In Evan Phillips's first game back, he pitched in the 6th inning with the Dodgers down 7-5 at the time. The Dodgers later took the lead, and Shelby Miller pitched in the 9th inning for his first save. I don't know if it's just because it's his first game back, Scott. They wanted to ease him back in or whatever, but
it's weird. It's hard to, because Brusdar Graterol is the latest taking paternity leave right now for the Dodgers, right? So, and he got the most recent save. He's worked late in games. I think his last 3 appearances, Graterols have been to finish out a game, once for a save and once with Phillips setting up for him. I would still rather have Phillips than any other Dodgers reliever right now, but I think Graterol is right there. Shelby Miller, I'm going to chalk this one up as a fluke. He's had a lot of walks out of the bullpen, and I'm not sure they really want him in this high leverage role. I know 164 ERA, but he's had a lot of walks, and this is a pretty new role for him. So it would be surprising if they went back to him for a bunch of saves, but it's interesting how they handled Phillips in this one, even with Graterol not available.
For the Mariners, Paul Sewald entered the 9th with a 3-run lead. He gave up 1 run, but struck out 2 for his 7th save. For the Tigers, Alex Lang was unavailable. Jason Foley recorded the final 4 outs for his 2nd save. For the Royals, Aroldis Chapman entered in the 8th with a 3-run lead. He gave up 2 runs, one of those earned. He was relieved by Scott Barlow, who recorded the final 5 outs. He had 2 strikeouts, and he picked up his 3rd save. So, all right. Maybe swinging a little bit back towards Scott Barlow now.
Maybe. Yeah, and Chapman, I believe, took a loss on Sunday or Monday as well in his previous appearance.
Yeah, I think it was Sunday, but maybe Barlow getting that back. For the Angels, well, technically he never lost it. For the Angels, Carlos Estevez retired the final 5 batters for his 4th save and is 49% rostered if you do need saves. The regular closers out there. For the Reds, Alexis Diaz struck out 2 for his 3rd save. For the Red Sox, Kenley Jansen recorded the final 2 outs for his 6th save. For the Giants, Camilo Doval entered in the 8th with the game tied. Runners on 2nd and 3rd. He allowed a 2-run single. Looks like he was about to take the loss. And then Ryan Helsley happened. He entered in the 9th inning with a 2-run lead. It did start out with an error, so not all his fault, but gave up an RBI double and then a walk-off 2-run homer to Blake Sable. So we'll see how much of a leash they give Ryan Helsley moving forward. To stream or not to stream, we'll start with Wednesday. Domingo Germán at the Twins.
I will give that a maybe.
Okay.
See what else we have.
Kenta Maeda versus the Yankees.
Gonna pass on that with the health issues.
Tanner Houck at the Orioles.
Nah.
Tyler Wells versus the Red Sox.
No.
Yusei Kikuchi versus the White Sox.
I think I like him a little more than Germán.
Michael Kopech at the Blue Jays.
No.
Germán Marquez at the Guardians.
No.
Rowanzi Contreras versus the Dodgers.
No.
Taijuan Walker versus the Mariners.
No.
Mackenzie Gore at the Mets.
No.
Michael Wacha at the Cubs.
No.
Drew Smyly versus the Padres.
No.
Steven Matz at the Giants.
No.
And Luis Medina in his debut at the Angels.
Gonna think about this. No.
All right. So it sounds like Kikuchi and Germán are the biggest maybes of that group there.
And who is... Okay, so the Guardians are facing Colorado. So if Tanner Bybee gets called up, that's a fascinating one.
Yeah,
I might roll the dice on that, given the alternatives here.
Yeah, it's not a bad call. For Thursday, we've got Braxton Garrett at the Braves.
No.
Mitch Keller versus the Dodgers.
Tough matchup. Probably not.
Matt Strahm versus the Mariners.
No.
Seth Lugo at the Cubs.
I could see doing that, but I'm not thrilled with it.
Hayden Wesneski versus the Mariners.
No.
JP Sears at the Angels.
No.
Kyle Gibson at the Tigers.
Yes, though I will point out that didn't go so well for Eric Lauer here on Tuesday.
He's done. Eric Lauer's done.
You were so excited about him last time.
He's cooked.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough always like chasing yesterday's start, but I understand the temptation given how unreliable pitching on the whole has been. But, Eric Lauer is Eric Lauer.
Yeah. Joey Lucchesi versus the Nationals.
If I'm feeling brave, maybe.
Fortune favors the Braves, Scott. Zach Greinke at the Twins.
No.
All right, we're going to wrap there. For Scott, I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning in to Fantasy Baseball today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. We'll be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.